The Silent Crisis of Meaning: How to Transcend Nihilism in the Modern Age. Imagine waking up one day and realizing that nothing around you truly means anything. The news, the endless social media posts, the constant stream of information, it all feels hollow. You scroll, you watch, you consume, yet deep inside, you feel emptier than ever. Have you ever wondered why so many people today feel detached, directionless, or profoundly indifferent to life itself? Why is nihilism, the belief that life has no inherent meaning, silently becoming the default philosophy of our time? In this exploration, we will uncover how modern culture, technology, and our own psychological structures have led us into this quiet crisis. We will examine the thinkers who foresaw this transformation, and more importantly, we will discover what must be done to rise above it. The final realization might completely change the way you understand the world and your place within it. The roots of meaning's collapse. Nihilism did not appear suddenly. Its spread intensified in the modern era, the age of reason and industrial progress, when we systematically dismantled the structures that once provided universal purpose. When Friedrich Nietzsche declared, "God is dead, and we have killed him," he was speaking not of a literal death, but of the final collapse of shared meaning. Humanity, he argued, had destroyed the moral and spiritual frameworks that gave life purpose. We were left staring into the abyss, profoundly uncertain of what to believe. Our ancestors found meaning through religion, community, tradition, and the natural world. Today, we seek meaning through relentless consumption, quick entertainment, and digital validation. The result? A society flooded with information but starving for wisdom. A generation more connected than ever, yet profoundly isolated. Modern nihilism is not the dramatic philosophical despair. It is subtle. It is the quiet resignation that says nothing really matters. It is the apathy that keeps us scrolling instead of acting, numbing instead of feeling. It hides behind irony and endless distraction, serving only to avoid confronting the inner void. The psychiatrist Viktor Frankl, a survivor of the concentration camps, observed something critical. Those who lost their sense of purpose were the first to give up. He wrote that life is never made unbearable by circumstances, but only by the lack of meaning and purpose. If this was true even in the darkest of times, what does it say about our current world, where comfort is abundant but meaning is scarce? Nihilism thrives where meaning decays, and meaning decays when everything becomes relative, when nothing is sacred, and when the only value that remains is personal, fleeting pleasure. Our society has replaced faith with algorithms, community with individualism, and depth with distraction. This transactional worldview is a poison to the soul. Every human interaction, every piece of art, every moment of silence is converted into data, a metric, or a fleeting dopamine hit. We have exchanged the profound for the productive, and the sacred for the superficial. We chase careers for prestige, relationships for comfort, and pleasure for escape. Yet when the lights go out, that internal whisper confirms, none of it feels real. That whisper is nihilism, and it is growing louder. It is the existential hangover of a culture that prioritized efficiency over spirit. Albert Camus confronted this despair directly. He argued that even if life holds no ultimate cosmic meaning, we must rebel against the absurd by consciously creating our own purpose. The meaning of life, he insisted, is whatever you choose to give it. But in our age of passive consumption, how many still possess the strength to create meaning rather than simply consume distraction? To choose is an act of creation. To scroll is an act of surrender. Nietzsche himself believed that nihilism was not the end, but a necessary transformation, a fire that would burn away false values and make room for something higher. Perhaps this quiet crisis is not the death of meaning, but the labor pains of its rebirth. It is the universe calling us to maturity. The shadow of technology and hyper-individualism. The technological revolution promised connection and knowledge, yet it delivered an unprecedented mechanism for meaning evaporation. We are constantly bombarded with idealized lives, filtered realities, and curated successes, leading to a pervasive sense of inadequacy. The comparison trap is a nihilistic machine. Why strive for excellence when millions are supposedly already achieving perfection? This digital deluge contributes to the philosophical problem. It removes the necessity of confrontation. Our ancestors had to confront the harsh reality of nature, community, and mortality. These confrontations naturally generated meaning, the meaning of survival, belonging, and legacy. Today, we are shielded from true confrontation by comfort and distraction. We outsource our thinking to algorithms, our memory to hard drives, and our emotional processing to entertainment. This hyper-individualism, celebrated as the peak of freedom, is also a profound vulnerability. The philosopher Erich Fromm wrote extensively on this paradox. When an individual is completely free from external authority, free from the church, the village, the rigid roles, they become free to create their own values. But he found that this freedom is terrifying. The isolation it imposes is too heavy for many to bear. Consequently, people rush back into new forms of conformity, sacrificing their self for the comfort of the collective digital mind or a consumer identity. We trade authentic solitude for digital loneliness. The cost of this is high: the disintegration of shared ritual. Rituals, whether religious, communal, or even simple family traditions, are the psychological anchors that ground meaning. They pull us out of chronological time, chronos, and place us into sacred time, kairos, where actions have resonance. When our only rituals are clicks, swipes, and the fleeting experience of a trending video, the deep architecture of the soul starves. This is the psychological fuel of modern nihilism, the loss of necessary hardship and the collapse of ritual. Cultural echoes, the language of apathy. Nihilism is alive and active in the fabric of our culture. Modern culture celebrates detachment. We are instructed to not care too much, to go with the flow. While this sounds liberating, it often masks the quiet despair of a generation that no longer genuinely believes in anything beyond the self. In media, irony replaces sincerity. Cynicism replaces hope. Humor is used as a shield to mask our profound discomfort with reality. Memes and online jokes have become the language of our collective apathy. When everything is reduced to a joke, significance is lost. This cultural nihilism was born from a century of disillusionment. 2 world wars, political corruption, and the collapse of traditional belief systems shattered faith in old narratives. We embraced an era that promised liberation through science and technology, but that very liberation dismantled the comforting illusions that once gave life structure. The modern human became a wanderer, free, yet utterly lost. This loss of direction permeates everything. We are told to be ourselves, but no one defines what that means. When every path seems meaningless, the only thing left to worship is the self. Yet even the self feels unstable, constantly shifting under the weight of digital performance and social comparison. The ego, without a greater purpose, simply becomes a hollow vessel chasing temporary validation. The psychiatrist Carl Jung believed that the human soul cannot survive without a profound sense of meaning, a connection to something greater than the ego. When society loses its myths and higher ideals, the unconscious compensates through overwhelming anxiety, depression, and inner chaos. Jung saw the neurosis of modern people as a refusal to deal with legitimate suffering and the search for soul. He warned that if we don't find new meaning, the void would inevitably consume us from within. Today, we see this prediction fulfilled. Rates of loneliness, mental illness, and existential anxiety are skyrocketing. We are living in what Jung might have called a collective dark night of the soul. The soul's response to the meaning crisis is sickness. Philosophically, nihilism is the logical consequence of a society that treats everything as material, measurable, and transactional. When money is the dominant language, everything sacred turns into a commodity. Even love becomes a contract, and self-worth is reduced to a metric on a screen. Yet, deep down, we still crave meaning. Even those who claim not to believe in anything still yearn for something sacred. The human heart cannot live in a vacuum. That is why, when traditional meaning fades, we replace it with new idols, fame, success, or manufactured outrage. We worship whatever makes us feel something, even if the feeling never lasts. Jean-Paul Sartre described this as the nausea of existence, the unbearable awareness that life continues endlessly without a final purpose. This is the psychological loop of modern nihilism, the desperate pursuit of significance in a world that has forgotten what significance truly is. The inner battle, the call to the self. Nihilism lives quietly within us. It manifests as a persistent lack of motivation, detachment, or a subtle belief that our actions don't genuinely matter. We often mistake this feeling for laziness, but it is the symptom of a deeper spiritual disconnection. The philosopher Erich Fromm wrote that when man becomes completely free from external authority, he must then take on the terrifying responsibility of creating his own meaning. Many are unprepared for that immense responsibility. They are free, but they are frightened. They possess autonomy without purpose, which is the ultimate existential burden. You can see this quiet despair in everyday life. The employee who climbs the corporate ladder only to realize there is no fulfillment at the top. The influencer who gains millions of followers but feels more isolated than ever. These are not failures of ambition. They are symptoms of a profound hunger for meaning. Carl Jung would have called this a loss of the self. When the individual disconnects from their inner essence, the deep source of wisdom and purpose, the ego becomes inflated, lost in illusions of control and achievement. The outer world becomes everything, and the inner world fades into silence. But the unconscious signals never truly disappear. They grow louder, manifesting through anxiety and restlessness. These signals are the soul's urgent call to awaken. The symptoms are not the problem, they are the path back to the self. You may have felt that quiet voice asking, "What's the point?" It arrives when success feels hollow or pleasure no longer satisfies. It is the invitation of nihilism, to surrender, to drift passively. But it is also an invitation to transformation. When everything you once believed in collapses, you are finally free to rebuild your world on a foundation of truth. Both Camus and Nietzsche saw this collapse as a necessary test. Nietzsche believed humanity had to endure the death of its false moral and ideological gods before a new, stronger spirit could emerge. Camus called this the absurd, not a thing to be feared, but to be embraced. To live without ultimate guarantee and still choose to love, to act, to create. That is the most radical act of rebellion against despair. This is where true courage is forged, in the face of the unanswerable. Meaning is not something we find, it is something we forge through conscious living. Our society rewards distraction, not consciousness. Yet it is precisely in the moments of stillness, solitude, and accepted suffering that meaning begins to form. These are not our enemies. They are the raw materials of the soul's awakening. We must relearn the value of the pause. Viktor Frankl reminded us that the ultimate freedom is the freedom to choose one's attitude in any situation. Meaning is not given by life, it is created by how we respond to it. The human spirit resists passivity. No matter how cynical the world becomes, something in us still longs to believe, to connect, to create. The hunger for meaning has not died. It has simply been buried under overwhelming noise. Transcending the void. 3 steps to meaning. If nihilism is the shadow of our age, the task before us is to understand what it is trying to teach us. Every great transformation begins with a collapse, and in that resulting silence, something sacred waits to be born. To overcome nihilism, we must face the void without fear. The void is not our enemy. It is the mirror in which we finally see ourselves without illusions. It strips away the false and forces us to confront the question, what gives your life meaning? The answer will not come from external sources. It will come from the deep inner drive to affirm life, to say yes, even to suffering, chaos, and uncertainty. Nietzsche's will to power is this deep drive, the affirmation of existence itself. Meaning is not born from comfort. It is born from conscious struggle. When we embrace the void, it becomes fertile ground for new meaning to grow. We transcend nihilism through action, proving that even in an absurd universe, meaning can still be created as a conscious act of rebellion. The rebellion is the creation. Carl Jung believed that when old symbols die, the human psyche must give birth to new myths. The sacred has not disappeared. It has simply moved inward. The temple is the human soul. So how do we begin the journey? Awareness. Embrace the emptiness. Pay attention to the moments when you feel that emptiness, not as a fear, but as a signal. That emptiness is the doorway to authenticity. Ask yourself, what am I willing to suffer for? What gives me the profound sense that I am alive? The answers are the essential seeds of your personal meaning. This step requires ruthless honesty. Creation. Forge your purpose. Do not wait for meaning to simply appear. Create it through your actions, your choices, your relationships. Meaning grows wherever we invest our time and energy consciously. Every authentic act pushes back against the tide of nihilism. Every moment of presence is a defiance of emptiness. This is the active rebellion Camus prescribed. Connection. See the interconnectedness. Nihilism isolates. But the truth is, we are profoundly interconnected, to one another, to nature, to the cosmos. When you begin to see yourself not as a separate observer, but as a living part of this vast, mysterious whole, life regains its depth. Reclaim your membership in the universal. Albert Camus argued that the struggle itself is enough to fill a man's heart. Perhaps the ultimate cure to nihilism is to embrace existence as it is, imperfect, fleeting, yet profoundly meaningful when lived with awareness and love. Nihilism is not the darkness that destroys us, but the night through which we must travel to find the dawn. The fact that we can even yearn for meaning proves that something within us already knows the answer. The question now is, will we dare to awaken? Will we let the noise of the world drown out our inner voice? Because the final truth of nihilism is not that nothing matters, but that everything can matter if you choose to make it so.